Somatic Symptom Disorder in Modern Day by Daniela Mendez-Van. Somatic form in modern day use. I wanted to talk about how people saw somatic form in modern day because it is a bit of a complicated disorder. I wanted to talk about the non-believers, the believers or idealists, the law-related, and the emotional. The non-believers would be the people who don't believe that it exists, who are faking their illness, that they're just wanting attention. We have the believers who do believe that there is something wrong, whether it's physically, mentally, whatever, and also the idealists who believe for sure in the disorder and want to do something about it. Then we also have the law-related, which is when the law gets involved with somatoform. So whether they restrict or enable something to happen. And then lastly, we have the emotional point of view, which is for the person who actually has the somatoform or the people surrounding. We'll start off with what is it? Somatization or somatoform disorder is the physical symptoms not explained by physical or mental disorder. These are physical symptoms like pain that you would feel but you cannot be scientifically proven or visually seen. And these people usually do not intend to produce it or even fake it. They do not do it on purpose. And then in order to get the somatic symptom disorder, it needs to be diagnosed and also assessed. So a person needs to be formally diagnosed in order to file insurance claims because it can be costly in order to get all of the treatments done, making sure that everything is right, and so on and so forth. And then also to know what kind of disability you have. Once you have the disability, we have to plan and manage the appropriate treatment. This could mean, do you need a treatment facility, any special arrangements, staffing, physical environment, do you need a psychiatrist? And again, this could end up costing money for the insurance entities. The diagnosis would be explained as some unexplained physical pain or symptom. It could be just regular pain, gastrointestinal, sexual, or pseudo-neurological. However, there is an issue. The symptoms can vary a lot. This means that the location can change of the pain, also what kind of pain it is it sharp, and also the severity of changes. How strong can you feel that pain? And this can be an issue because you can't look at the same pain as the reason for the diagnosis. You have to look at it as multiple pain over a long period of time. And this ends up being very costly, which ends up going to the insurance and also to the people who have the disorder. There are also cognitive symptoms. These could be persistent thoughts or feelings about pain. This could make someone worried, anxious, or even think about death. You have to remember that these people are feeling this pain and can actually believe that it could be leading them to death because this pain will not go away. It can't be diagnosed. There isn't much treatment for it, so that is one thing that they think about. They also have to talk about the severity. Is it a mild severity, 1, 2 feelings, moderate, or severe? Are there multiple physical symptoms or one severe symptom? This ends up becoming kind of a word of mouth type of thing, where the doctor has to rely on whether or not he believes the patient and believes that they're not faking the pain, and whether or not that belief leads to the diagnosis. Then we go to treatment. Once you've been diagnosed, you can see a physician and get examined on a regular basis. They can jot down all your pains, where they have traveled, and they will probably avoid using unnecessarily diagnosis tests or therapies because it is costly. And also, if your pain keeps migrating, you will probably only focus on that specific pain versus your entire body and those unnecessary tests. You can also do cognitive behavioral therapy, which could promote good behavior, like coping with the pain or what you feel, having personal adjustments, making sure that you can adjust to the pain that you feel and still go on a day-to-day basis without having it interfere with life, and more. And now we're actually going to talk about the views, now that we know what it is. In case 1, it was a story about mislabeling sick people as mentally ill. The doctors, these are quotes from people who actually talk about the disorder itself. And it includes both believers and non-believers. At first, it starts with non-believers who say that doctors must always take symptoms very seriously and investigate all medical explanations. While this is true, again, this person is talking about how whether or not they are being lied to by the patient, they will take the symptoms very seriously and spend all of their assets trying to find a medical explanation, which could end up wasting time and money. And again, this goes back to it costing more, the insurance company having to pay for it, the patient having to pay for it, or the community since it goes down through taxes and so on and so forth. Another person talked about how they think they've gone overboard. Francis here talks about how maybe they're just over-exaggerating, that they aren't actually feeling it, they just want to get the attention. And again, this is a person who does not believe in the disorder. We have another person who talks about how they've been spending too much time on the internet researching the symptoms, and because of that, they are being overwhelmed by anxiety, and that's what risks them into having the mental disorder diagnosis. This one's kind of funny because it talks about how the disorder is brought on by the fear of finding out something, which could, but is not necessarily the way that it works. And this person would be probably labeled as a believer, non-believer, because he believes in the mental disorder diagnosis, in this case, the somatic symptom disorder, but he is not very focused on how you get it. And then we have, at the very end of the article, we have somebody who actually defends the somatic symptom disorder and at the very minimum wants people to feel like they are believed in. She says, when someone is not believed, it is so defeating that person emotionally. And it is hard to not be believed when you're feeling pain, whether or not you do have it, because emotionally it feels like they have given up on you and also on whatever you do have. You could end up dying because of it, or you could just end up being emotionally hurt because of it. And then another person mentions at the very end of the article how critics worry that patients will be misdiagnosed as mentally ill and won't get treatment. This is pretty true. So whether or not the person in this article got diagnosed or misdiagnosed as mentally ill, this won't necessarily lead them to treatment because of whether or not they have it and they just couldn't be found, or if they didn't have it. This ends up being an issue because you want to be diagnosed, you want to find the reason of your pain, you want to get treatment, you want to get better. And you want to be believed, which are what the last two people mentioned. And it ends up being a believer's point of view of we should believe the somatic symptom disorder and we should do something about it. And then we'll go on to case 2. DCM-5 refuses to correct somatic symptom disorder. This is by a psychologist blogger named Alan J. Francis. He is a very dedicated person, especially with somatic symptom disorder. He ended up sending multiple letters to DCM-5 to hopefully help improve how we label for somatic symptom disorder. He talks about how 1 in 6 people with cancer and heart disease are mislabeled, and also how 1 in 14 are not even medically ill. And he really wants to make a difference in how we diagnose the somatic symptom disorder. He wanted to do it in 2 ways: improving the wording so that they would reduce mislabeling, and also to hopefully not get as many outreach public or concerned professionals. However, they ended up refusing and or not answering back to him, and he wrote this really long blog about how they are not doing what they should be, how the American Psychiatry Association has not proven itself competent to produce a safe and scientifically sound diagnostic system. And the point of view of this person would be that he is a very big believer. In fact, he wants to help the disorder improve, to give better diagnosis, to help people with treatments, to make sure that the professionals are actually being heard, and also that the public isn't as outraged because the right diagnoses are given out. And he is a believer, and he wants to legally have the correct type of diagnosis for the somatic symptom disorder. That way, no issues arise from it. And lastly, we have case 3, losing custody due to a diagnosis. This one's a little complicated because we have multiple point of views. So, Connecticut parents lose their 15-year-old girl to a Massachusetts hospital. This means that even though they live in Connecticut, the girl now lives in Massachusetts mental hospital because of the parents refusing treatment for her. So she was diagnosed with somatic symptom disorder after they went to the hospital, found nothing wrong with her, and then after a little while, she ended up being confined to a wheelchair, and because of her alleged medical symptoms not being treated, that her condition deteriorated. And so after that time, which was February 2013, she was diagnosed with somatic symptom disorder, and the parents refused to get treatment for her. They were even verbally abusing the hospital caregivers by calling them Nazis and accusing them of kidnapping, killing their daughter. Because of this, a judge ruled for them to lose custody and to let the girl live in the Massachusetts hospital. So multiple point of views here. We have the non-believers, which I'm calling the parents, because they are refusing treatment, and usually you won't refuse treatment unless you don't believe that there is something wrong with the daughter in this case. And she is a non-believer. We have the judge, who is a believer in the very minimum because of the law, because the girl is not getting the right treatment. The parents are not fulfilling the right to take care of her, to correctly take care of her. Therefore, by law and by her belief in it, she has made them lose custody of the daughter. We also have the emotional view of the daughter, who is the person who has the somatic symptom disorder, and her losing her parents because of them not believing in her disorder and also not giving them treatment. And we also have the emotional point of view of the parents who are losing their daughter, their own blood, because of the fact that they didn't want the treatment and also because of what they did to the caregivers. And so in order for them to get back the daughter, they must attend weekly visits, follow treatment plan outlined, participate in family therapy, and continue to review her progress in DCF. If not, she will stay in that hospital until the age of 18. So again, we have multiple point of views. We have the believer, who is the judge, the law, which is the judge also. How does the somatic disorder affect the girl and also the family? The emotional point of view of the girl and also the family. And this one is very interesting because we have a case of morality, also kind of tradition, and it makes it a bit complicated on who is right, but also making sure that she gets the treatment she needs. And again, we have the somatoform modern day use. We have the unbelievers, we have the believers or idealists, we have the law related, and we have the emotional. So the non-believers in case 1 were the people who were saying how the doctors would do anything because of a symptom, that they could be getting it off of the internet, and that's the reason why they have the disorder. We also have in case 3 the parents who refused the treatment probably because they didn't believe in the disorder. We also have the believers or idealists. In case 1, we have the people at the very bottom who talked about how people want to be believed and don't want to be emotionally pained because of it. And also in case 2, and also a bit of case 1, how people want to be diagnosed correctly. They want to get the help that they need, the correct help, and also just want to do something about the pain because they do want to get better and they want to be diagnosed and hopefully get that treatment. We have the law related, which is case 2 and case 3. Case 2 because people want to be diagnosed correctly, and it has caused a bit of a riot and also problems with the professionals. And in case 3, the parents losing the daughter because of the somatic stress or somatic symptom disorder, and them not wanting to give the right treatment for her. And lastly, we have the emotional, which is in case 2, Alan J. Francis, the blogger, truly wants to make a difference about how the somatic symptom disorder is given out and diagnosed, and in case 3, about how the person who actually has the somatic symptom disorder, the 15-year-old girl, is feeling because she lost her parents, and also the parents themselves who have lost the daughter because of their own beliefs. And I really wanted to study this because it seemed a bit of a complicated emotional type of situation. The disorder is a little hard to understand and also a little hard to believe. It's pretty much saying because you don't see it or hear it, is it there type of point of view. Kind of like, does God exist? You can believe it or you can't. And this may be a bit of a bad example, but it does end up becoming very emotional. Do you believe it? Do you not believe it? And it's really hard to prove, which makes it a bit of a complicated situation in modern day because we are very fact-driven. We believe most, if not everything, that a doctor says or a scientist says, and just because we can't see or scientifically prove something, can we believe in people with somatic symptom disorder? Do people believe in them? And also, what changes have happened? I tried to do a history of somatoform, and it was really hard because there weren't many articles on it. It just talked about how it had slightly changed, but there were no dates, no people who invented it, not much about that. And even trying to find news articles for these case studies, there weren't many. Or at the very minimum, not obviously. There were many things about mental diseases, but not necessarily this type of mental disease. And that became a little concerning to me. It's like, why aren't we talking about this more? And it's like, people don't know about it. Some people don't even believe in it. And yet, it is a thing, and we should believe in it more. At the very minimum, be educated about it. Because it does relate to the non-believers, the believers, the law-related, and the emotional. Because a lot of people are involved because of this. And it should be taken a little bit more seriously. So again, I wanted to study the views of somatic symptom disorder in modern day, mainly because it's not very well seen or known about, yet it affects a lot of people, and also they have a lot of different point of views than everybody else. And you should be well informed before making your decision, and also to know whether or not it is law related. So again, my point of views that were mentioned were non-believer, believers, law related, and emotional. And citations. Yay!